Hello, everyone. Bogdan Bratis from Saspod here. I have here Jonathan Marciano, one of my clients. We've been working together for quite some time for the podcast FP&A Today. We're going to explore basically the journey of FP&A Today and see how that evolved over time and basically how we work together to get this show to this level and basically how we collaborated over time. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
I'm going to start with the first question. What inspired your decision to launch the podcast and how this idea came to mind?
Yeah, so I should say I'm the content director of Datarails, which is a SaaS B2B company focusing in on selling to the CFO's office, chief financial officers, in particular, like a niche within that called financial planning and analysis. If you could make a podcast about that, I think you could make a podcast about anything, about this niche of FP&A. And yeah, so coming in, I mean, I've been in marketing for quite a while, and obviously, listen to podcasts, listen especially to marketing podcasts. And it's sort of something that you see a lot of, gurus and marketing gurus talking about. You need to set up a podcast. It's the way, or have we missed the podcast boat or whatever? But it was always something that I felt like it would be great for, a company to have. And for me, especially coming in and starting to learn about the world of financial planning and analysis in companies, I very much felt they were like, unsung heroes in the organization. You hear about, the CFOs kind of barely, but you normally hear about the CEOs. But there's this whole kind of machine operating within businesses that you just don't get any exposure, don't get any media coverage. And there was no one really serving them in any kind of content. And for me, kind of it triggered that thing in me that we need to be telling their stories. There's so many interesting stories that we just don't know of. No one's giving them the time to talk. And that was like my inspiration was that I wanted to, there were a few influencers here and there, like who are out there talking, but I wanted to kind of get those people that weren't always, looking for the spotlight and dragging them into the studio and making them tell about the sort of secret sauce and the secret processes that are happening in finance and kind of being the champion for them with the podcast.
Awesome, Jonathan. So I think we met in 2020 or 2021. Do you remember? Roughly
2021, I want to say.
Yeah, I think 2021. I think. Yeah, I think 20 because it was such a long time already.
Yeah.
And I think that year was a boom for podcasting. Like a lot of people started podcasts. Obviously, in that time there were a lot of people offering their services for podcast production, and we met on Upwork. What was your decision process to choose working with me? Like, what made you say, like, look, this is the guy that I want to take care of this podcast?
I think it was, so you think I looked at a few proposals. I think like you really understood where I was coming from. You were like, okay, I get it. You've heard the word podcast before, but you really know nothing more than that. And you really you weren't daunted by that. You took us by the hand and said, look, this is what you need. I think we had a host by then, and you told us like step by step what we needed. I think, obviously I was drawn by the variety of podcasts that you worked with. Obviously I checked out, some of the podcasts and I could listen to the quality of the sound. Like clearly this is, a very professional quality, but, and they weren't don't necessarily big podcasts, but they were treated with Netflix production values, giving those audiences what they, what they deserve. So that very much spoke to me. And just, I think you were very available, at the beginning, especially. There's just so much to kind of everything is daunting. I think I started reading articles about how to start a podcast. I think I was just more confused reading those articles than actually doing it. Yeah. So I think it was just that kind of, knowing that I was in safe hands, because this was a huge, we're not a huge company, and this is a big investment and also a big personal career kind of defining thing to do in terms of being in a SaaS B2B company. And there's a lot of people that say there could be money better spent. So having that kind of security is an important thing.
Awesome. And Yeah, Datarails is a huge company. And I was thinking, have you ever thought about the idea of getting the podcast in-house, like producing it in-house? Probably you have a marketing team that creates a lot of content for you, audiovisual content.
So we do, but it's a pretty lean team, and I think we want everyone in the team who's here to be doing the strategic stuff of organizing and running the big picture things. So obviously, having overall control of the podcast or having overall control of the blog, whatever the message is. But we need to be free to do kind of whatever the big thinking, to really getting to know our audience, to do the research. And we need experts to kind of do the groundwork, do the technical work. We know what we're good at. We're good at, understanding the content and, the distribution. But we need, for a lean team, we kind of need excellent people to work with that we can trust and lean on and just know that things will get done. Yeah, because we're trying to build something at scale. And if you hire, it's like, it's hard to find that kind of level of quality. So that's why, for podcasts or for, designers, as we scale, we need to kind of have a body of people that we can work with.
Awesome. And Jonathan, I know that since we've been working together, man, we never skipped a bit. There was no week left without an episode, right? No. Which is amazing. Even Christmas time, I remember we produced a few things for you, a few shows and extra assets and stuff like that. In your opinion, how was Saspod instrumental to the success of the podcast? What do you think is the value that we provided to you in terms of growing this podcast? Because obviously you are a co-producer of the podcast as well, because you take a lot of decisions. We don't do the guest booking on our side. You're dealing with that. Obviously, we have Paul, and now we're going to have a new host to the podcast that's going to take it forward. So there's a culmination of things that are making this podcast grow. But what Saspod contributed to the podcast?
So I think it's the technical ability to know that even when sometimes things went wrong and people had mics that weren't clipped, or there was like clicking sounds and things like that, you kind of turned it round and found a way to fix it. When things go wrong is when you kind of rely on people, and you always found a way to, it's a lot of effort on my time and Paul's time for us to spend time, recording a podcast and then find out that it didn't work. And then you managed to find this kind of innovative way to get the sound quality to almost perfect, even though there was this kind of bug that when it was being recorded. I think you kind of let Paul and I and, do what we, do best, which is understand the audience and book the guests and research the content. And you do all the legwork, all the kind of stuff that, make sure that it's, quality, that you expect at the very, very top level of, when you're watching, HBO or whatever, and that's kind of what we get from it is reassurance, not skipping a beat. We did it in cold days, hot days, and made sure that we had enough guests to fill and let us focus on maintaining quality.
Yeah, amazing. I checked the latest stats on Podbean, because that's what you're using for the host. And I see that literally every month there is a bit of an extra percentage on growing the podcast. So for example, I'm not sure how many downloads we've got this month. It's growing, definitely. Like, what do you expect from the podcast moving forward this year? Do you have any aspirations, like if there's like maybe numbers that you want to hit, or it could be like not even numbers, because not everybody is doing the podcast for the numbers. Some people do the podcast for the network, other people do the podcast for branding awareness and things like that. What are your aspirations for the podcast for 2024?
So I think at time of this interview, it's 230,000 downloads, which for super niche in 2 years, less than 2 years, in a super niche industry. And I see posts about other people's podcasts, and they're raving about getting not even close to those numbers, and I'm like, wow, we've really got something special here. And I think it's, in terms of metrics, I think, I'm a little bit like whatever vanity metrics. So I want to get to 500,000. I want to get to 1 million. I like that thing where they send you on Podbean, you've now reached 200,000, 300,000. That's kind of cool. Makes you feel like you're winning. But obviously, the metrics is that we have a lot of sales calls, and we hear more and more people saying, we heard about you. We love the podcast. Thank you for the podcast. So we're building, trust with prospects and our audience. That's the most important thing. Like, we're building a brand here, and the podcast is a huge part of our brand. There's very rarely any, apart from our ads, there's very, very, ever rarely any talk about, our company, or even, tech companies in particular. We're very much focused on quality, and giving people value for, we know that they could be doing a million and other things than listening to our podcast or any podcast. So we every show, we want it to be amazing. We want the best guests. We want the most untold stories. And yeah, that's kind of on us. And then the best thing we get is when people, it's not a cold call when someone is coming to you saying, we love your podcast. They know the brand. They trust the brand. They know, that we're putting and investing a lot of time in something that's a lot of value to them in their careers. So that's very beneficial.
Awesome. Jonathan, and for the people that want to start a podcast, maybe even in the niche of FP&A, what advice would you have for these individuals or businesses that would want to start a podcast this year? What do you think are the challenges, and what do you think would be your advice in overcoming these challenges?
First of all, check what podcasts are available in whatever that niche is. And I don't know what it is, but make sure that your podcast is going to be better than theirs, if there is an existing one, because there's no point of just producing another thing that's just a boring session. So just, if there isn't a podcast, then you've got an amazing opportunity. But if there is, you better make sure that yours is better, because people are not spending time listening to a boring podcast. Yeah, it's hard work. It's every week, whether you like it or not. Well, in our case, it's every week. It can be different timelines, but every week, like it or not, there's a deadline for us of every Tuesday. We publish a podcast. You have to do show notes and the reach out and all of this, but it's you kind of have to be driven to want to do this kind of thing. You have to really, really want to invest in your audience and your community. So if you haven't got that passion, you'll probably only end up doing 5 or 6 and then stop. So you need to be driven by a passion to change, the quality in your industry and really improve people's lives. So if you don't have that, I think you'll probably fail.
I think also one of the things that we've done right with FP&A Today, working with you, is because you book quite a lot of guests in advance, which is great. And also Paul records the podcast, the episodes quite in time. So we have a list of episodes that are already ready for production. So we always have 4 episodes up front. So we don't really stress out that much in terms of, keeping the pace, because we always have a few episodes up front to publish, which is great. And we have time to take decisions, creative decisions and things like that. And yeah, it's awesome working with FP&A Today. I really enjoy our collaboration. It's amazing. And if the listeners or the viewers, because we record this as video as well, they want to learn more about Datarails, learn more about the podcast, where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. Datarails, www.datarails.com. Podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple. We have the majority on Apple, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, on Apple and Spotify, Apple, and we do the YouTube as well.
Yeah, YouTube.
We have it on YouTube.
So we have on our YouTube channel. So FP&A Today on those channels, or the Datarails YouTube channel. Yeah, and if you're in the market for an FP&A solution, or please get in touch. And yeah.
Awesome. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining the call. And let's get more podcasts going, and we'll meet again today, actually, to do the sound check for the new host for FP&A Today. And Thank you so much for joining.
We'll do a second case study when we're at 1 million downloads.
Yes, we will definitely do that.